trying to make a live video. Since many of you have asked to give some suggestions before exams, and I was not very much keen to give suggestions. I have made a video already about discussing, about all the types of questions that may come in literature exams, all types of questions, all kinds of questions, and how to answer them. I have already discussed that in a pretty long video, and if you have seen that, if you have watched that, you already know how to make a suggestion out of it. I mean, what are the questions, what are all the possible questions in front of you, and to deduct from them those which have appeared in the previous year. Then you have the suggestion. That's the simple thing. And if you have followed that technique, then you are doing the right thing. You won't need anybody's help anymore to give you suggestions. Okay, and you will be experienced. As long as you keep studying, you will be experienced with the process. It worked for me as a student, and it is not something that I have accumulated as a tutor or something like that. No. When I was a student, I got that idea, and I did that kind of structure, that kind of strategy, that these are all kinds of questions that come in exams. These are all kinds. Now from them I have to deduct, I have to cross out those questions which have already come in the year before. So that's how we get a suggestion. That's how we get a 100% guarantee of how to prepare for exams. Anyway, I'm just trying to see how this live thing works, number one, and number two, since many of you have asked, and many of you are from WBSU, which I am pretty much acquainted with the syllabus and the exams and the previous year's questions. So I am just going to share with you this suggestion about semesters that are coming. And I feel pretty much confident at this moment because my suggestions, I don't call them suggestions. Most of the time I call them questions you should practice. And they work. Every time they work. And recently the fourth semester of Calcutta University has taken place, and all the three papers, all the questions that my students have sent to me, and they told me that everything that I told them to study, those questions came in the exams, and they did well. So that always boosts my confidence. Naturally, after getting that news, I feel more likely to share this suggestion with you, these questions, just before the exam. So I am talking about semester 2, West Bengal State University. First of all, we'll be going to look at the questions that may appear in the Indian paper. In the Indian paper, poetry section, first, Henry Louis Vivian Derozio, Freedom to the Slave. In this particular poem, this is a pretty easy poem, and this doesn't require much effort to understand. One of the easiest poems that you have, or you will have ever in your syllabus. In case of Derozio's Freedom to the Slave, you should do critical appreciation, the common question. You should look at the imagery, and the imagery portion is related to nature. So nature also. So how nature is depicted in the poem, how the poet uses imagery in the poem, and the poet's sense of patriotism, his sense about his nation, India, and its freedom. Okay, so these four things at the most. Next, moving on to Kamala Das. And in case of Kamala Das, you should do the critical appreciation. Then, in the previous year, in 2022, the question was about stringent criticism of the patriarchal society. So the question was really about feminism that is portrayed in this poem. So, in case of Kamala Das, critical appreciation is a common question. Then, Kamala Das's introduction as an autobiographical poem. The answer is pretty same if you have to write about the significance of the title. Quite the same answer. So, autobiographical poem or the significance of the title. Next, feminism in the poem, and then as a specimen of modern poetry. That means about Kamala Das's style, language, her techniques, the words that she uses, and the absence of rhyme, rhythm, the language and the flow of the poem, the development of thought, all these things. So the style and language, or as a specimen of modern poetry, same question. So we have like 4 questions in total from Kamala Das to practice. Next, moving on to A.K. Ramanujan. In case of A.K. Ramanujan, you should do critical appreciation, that is the first thing. Number 2, East versus West conflict. Number 3, pretty similar, tradition versus modernity as a theme. Number 4, marriage as an institution. And related to that question, that is the next thing is law versus ethics, or in fact how Ramanujan compares marriage with prostitution. That question is also possible. Marriage as an institution is a very, very close question to that. So Ramanujan in this poem criticizes marriage as an institution, and he compares prostitution, which is legally not the right thing to do. He compares it with marriage and shows us that why is it illegal to be a prostitute or to engage in such a thing, whereas why marriage is always taken as holy and sanctified. Why? That kind of question is there in this poem. So doing marriage as an institution means you are studying the central idea that what is legally right and what is ethically right. And also the same question, the similar kind of question is that marriage is being compared with prostitution. So marriage versus prostitution in this poem. Moving on to Nissim Ezekiel. Nissim Ezekiel's poem is another easy poem, and in this poem we find that there are different kinds of love shown by different kinds of people towards the mother of the speaker of the poem. So love in different avatars, in different ways, is shown in this poem. That is the central idea of the poem. So it can be a question: love in different avatars, love in different ways. Second question is portrayal of superstition. And then the imagery. That is all. Moving on to Jayanta Mahapatra's poem, and in this poem, of course, critical appreciation is common, and next question is that is most important is significance of the title. Significance of the title, because the title is pretty symbolic here. Hunger doesn't mean one kind of hunger, but there are different kinds of hungers that are meant by the word, and how this is described and portrayed in the poem. So, the significance of the title. Third question is portrayal of poverty as a social evil. Portrayal of poverty as a social evil. And fourth question, imagery. That is very important. In case of this particular poem, imagery is very, very important. And you can practice about Mahapatra's style and language. Okay. I don't think that it is very probable to for this question to appear, style and language, but you can. Mostly the common questions are imagery, title, poverty related. Okay. Moving on to R.K. Narayan's novel, The Guide. First of all, do significance of the title, and doing the significance of the title and doing the character of Raju, pretty similar thing. Also, if you do the character of Raju, then the theme of disguise and deception is pretty similar to that, because the theme is centered on the character of Raju. So naturally, three questions can be prepared at once: significance of the title, character of Raju, and the theme of disguise and deception. All three have same kind of answers. So next question is theme of redemption or the ending of the novel. How does R.K. Narayan end the novel? What does it mean? And how is it executed? What message does it give to you, etc. So, ending of the novel. Character of Rosie is the next question. Character of Rosie. Question number 4, gender roles. Question number 5, tradition versus modernity as a theme, as a central idea. Question number 6, portrayal of Indian village life. And it is quite related to Raju's character, but this can be a different answer, a bit different, that this novel is a spiritual journey for Raju. Do you see this novel as a spiritual journey? That kind of question may come. And you should look at minor characters like Marco and villain, or people like villain. So these are minor characters, but in some cases you need to explain about those characters. So they are important. Done. R.K. Narayan's novel. With all these questions, you are done. And next, moving on to short stories. Shashi Deshpande. Shashi Deshpande's short story, The Intrusion. Now, in case of this particular story, you will have shorter questions. In case of short stories. So, 5-mark questions. Naturally, these are not going to be very long answers, and naturally the questions are going to be very pinpointed questions. So number 1, the C as a symbol. Number 2, marriage as an institution. Number 3, significance of the title. Number 4, description of the journey. I mean, at the beginning of the story, when the woman and the man, they are going towards the cottage, description of the journey and what goes on inside her head. Okay, that journey and description of the cottage. Chances for this question is pretty minimal, but it can be. And focus on imagery in this short story. So number 6, imagery. It won't come as imagery because imagery doesn't come in a 5-mark question. Okay, but one of the images can be asked about, like the image of the sea, the image of the journey and the sand and the shells, etc. The image of the cottage and its location and its description, the image of it. There are different images throughout the story, and one of the images can be given to be explained. Okay, so do the imagery, and I think that will be all right. Moving on to Ruskin Bond. Ruskin Bond's title, Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright, and tiger as a hero or protector. Focus on the ecosystem that Ruskin Bond depicts in the story. The ecosystem where he shows us that which animal eats which one, the egg and then the rat and then the ecosystem. Okay, the process of their getting food and their livelihoods, the depiction of the jungle. So that is something to be remembered. And then there is a tension between civilization and nature. Industry is coming, civilization is moving forward, and forest is going aloof and becoming weaker and weaker because tigers are not there, nobody is fearing the forest, etc. So when the last tiger is gone out of the forest loses its essence, and the economy, the livelihood of the people in the village, that change all throughout. So naturally, this is another important thing to look at. So civilization versus nature is as a central idea in this story. This should be prepared. Then the fourth one, villagers are dependents of the forest, but they do not know it very clearly until the tiger goes away. They always lived with the risk of the tiger being around, but they never understood how the tiger was protecting them from the change that was to come if the forest was obliterated. They didn't understand that, and that's why at the end of the story we get to see that the villagers are disappointed looking at the looking at the forest that is getting demolished, that is getting cut off. So villagers were unknowingly dependents of the tiger. Okay, so that should be looked at very carefully. Now, moving on to Salman Rushdie's The Free Radio. The first question, of course, the significance of the title. It is a false hope that Ramani clings to throughout his life, and how this false hope gives him life and also humiliates him in the process. So, significance of the title is very, very important. How the narrator describes the thief's widow. She is never named. She is never described in a neutral way. She is always called the thief's widow, even after she has married Ramani. She is always made the culprit out of everything. So, the narrator's description of the thief's widow is important. And the narrator, he is biased. We clearly see that. Naturally, why the narrator? We can see that the narrator is unreliable narrator. But why does Rushdie implement a narrator who is unreliable? What is the significance of having an unreliable narrator in a story? That is a point to look at. Then moving on, Ramani's migration from the village to the city, it is very symbolic. What does it symbolize? Its significance at the end of the story. So, theme of love also important, because Ramani's love towards the widow, and also the widow's love towards her children. Even if we are not convinced, we can say that the widow perhaps loved Ramani. But we cannot be conclusive. Maybe the widow did not love Ramani, but we can be sure of one thing. She did whatever she did because she had to look after her children. She had no money and she had so many children to feed, and she remarried. So the love of the mother towards the children and the love of Ramani towards the widow, the theme of love is at the center. And of course, unreliable narrator, the widow's character, and how the narrator portrays it. So the gender bias, the theme of gender bias. And it can be, it is very, very, I don't think it has much chance, but it can appear that the context of this story, I mean, that Indian government and the time of sterilization that was going on, the emergency period, the context of the story, that can appear as a question. I think its chance is minimal, but still. Okay. So that is everything that I have to suggest you about the Indian paper. Now moving on to British poetry and drama. Shakespeare's sonnet. First question, Shakespeare as a sonneteer. Second question, critical appreciation of sonnet number 30. Third question, imagery and word choices or language in sonnet number 30. Same question, language and imagery word choices, same question. Okay, in this particular case. Then the critical appreciation of sonnet 130. And one thing you must know, it may not come as just as I am saying, but it will be needed in your answers. If you know it, it will help in most of the answers. How does Shakespeare break away from the traditional concepts regarding poems of love? How does Shakespeare break away from the traditional concepts regarding poems of love? That is a question to care about. Next, John Donne. In case of John Donne, the canonization, the title is important. Second question, how does John Donne use metaphysical conceits in his poem? Third question, how does John Donne portray love as a spiritual journey in his poem, The Canonization? His use of imagery and his show of erudition. I mean, his show of knowledge of different subjects like theology, geography, alchemy, mythology. There are so many examples of that erudition in this particular poem. We should care about that. Next, moving on to Andrew Marvell. Andrew Marvell's poem has this central idea, carpe diem, carpe florem, pluck the flower, seize the day. So the carpe diem theme in Andrew Marvell's To His Coy Mistress. That is the first thing. Second, imagery. Third, structure of the poem. Fourth, style and diction. It is very much related to the structure of the poem, but a bit different. Question number 5. Same thing, erudition, show of erudition in Marvell's To His Coy Mistress. That means Marvell shows about different knowledges from different subjects. He shows about he talks about the biblical flood, he talks about the Indian Ganges, he talks about empires, he talks about biology, he talks about the Danubian philosophy of the castle and etc. So all these things, that is a show of erudition. So that should be cared about. Moving on to Geoffrey Chaucer. Significance of Canterbury Tales. Number 2, significance of the prologue. And number 3, Chaucer's language and style. That is all about Chaucer. Moving on to the plays. Shakespeare's Twelfth Night first. Twelfth Night, in case of Twelfth Night, the female character, Shakespeare's portrayal of the female characters is very, very important. Then there are certain characters which are important, like the character of Fest is important, very important in fact, and it is one of the complicated characters to write about. Then the characters of Malvolio or the character of Sir Toby, I don't think this kind of questions will come directly, but in some questions like Shakespeare's portrayal of the fools, you have to write about Sir Andrew and Malvolio, right? Along with Feste. Although Feste is not a fool, he is actually wise, but he is placed as a fool in the play structurally. His job is to be or to look like the fool while he is not actually a fool. Next, moving on to the character of the Duke. I think that because in the previous year Viola or Olivia's character was not asked, I don't think this year they will ask about the Duke, because the Duke is more of a weaker character in comparison with the female characters. So I think Viola and Olivia are more important than the Duke. But that is yet another question. Then significance of the subplot. That means Sir Toby, Maria, Malvolio, Fabian, Feste, they all do some things together, and that is the subplot. That is going parallelly with the plot, main plot of the play. So significance of the subplot is also important. You have to look at it carefully. You have to prepare the subplot individually, differentiating it from the play. Anyway, next, Twelfth Night as a romantic comedy. Same thing, don't get confused. If it is asked romantic comedy, festive comedy, just what is a comedy and what are its characteristics as a comedy? Do that, and all such questions you will be able to answer. Okay, so next question. Shakespeare's exploration of the theme of love. I don't think that this play portrays love in a very admirable way, but still, this is a question. Theme of social class is another thing. And the last one, Shakespeare uses different kinds of comic elements throughout the play. Different kinds of comic elements. Like, you see, it is a comedy because it is a romantic comedy, so romance is there. It is a comedy where there is a fool who is actually wise. There is satiric elements. Even in his dialogues, there are satiric elements. He is pointing towards different foolish ideas that the Duke or Olivia cling towards. And also there is wit in Sir Toby and Maria. There are actual fools like Sir Andrew and Malvolio. There is farcical elements there in the play. So there are different layers of comic elements for everyone to enjoy. In a single play, Shakespeare employs so many layers of comic elements. You should look at that. Okay. Moving on to the last text, that is Macbeth. In case of this text, I will give you too many questions. But, of course, I will tell you the most important ones first. Character of Lady Macbeth is first and foremost important. In the previous year, the Porter scene came. So, in this year, I am thinking of the rest of the important scenes like the banquet scene, the sleepwalking scene, and also remember that sometimes they don't say sleepwalking scene. Sometimes they ask like, write about Shakespeare's portrayal of somnambulism. Just a difficult word so that you can be confused. That is, somnambulism means sleepwalking. Simple as that. So don't get confused by that word. Next question is the significance of the weird sisters, or not only the weird sisters, but a little bit difficult that may come, that Shakespeare's use of the supernatural elements in this play. So Shakespeare's handling of the supernatural. Similar kind of question. And now that we think about the weird sisters, do the weird sisters actually represent fate? Is this fate actually representative of that kind of powerful fate that Sophocles wrote about in Oedipus? I mean, in that play also there was the theme of fate versus free will. Oedipus tried to get out of fate, but there was no free will actually. It was all futile at the end of the play. He thought that he was being able to go beyond fate's hands, but he was not actually. He was entangled. But in case of Macbeth, it is different. Macbeth creates his own fate by doing mistakes after mistakes after mistakes. So he is so ambitious, he cannot control himself after a certain point. He was instigated by the weird sisters. But can we say that weird sisters represent fate? And it was fated that Macbeth would kill and Macbeth would feel would have the consequences. Or should we say that no, the weird sisters just tried to give some true information to Macbeth and then a false hope, so that they knew that it would intrigue Macbeth, it would instigate him to follow a certain course that is dishonest, that is immoral, and he would follow that course to, carry on until his own doom. So, is it fate or is it free will? The conflict is here very, very debatable in case of this particular play. It is not like Oedipus Rex. So, this question is very important, fate versus free will in Shakespeare's Macbeth. Now, character of Macbeth is important, we know. But, if I am not wrong, character of Macbeth came in the previous year. So, character of Macbeth is important, but it came in the previous year. So, we have to care about the contrasts. How does Shakespeare use contrasts in his play? That means there is the contrast of Lady Macbeth, Lady Macduff. And there are two contrasting characters, contrasting Macbeth. The combination of Banquo and Macduff, the combination of these two characters are contrasting to that of Macbeth. So that is another important question. So focus on Banquo and Banquo and Macduff as contrasts to Macbeth. Then it is related to Lady Macbeth's character and combining the weird sisters. The question is, do you consider Lady Macbeth as a fourth witch? Justify your answer. This question sometimes comes. You have to use your own intelligence to think about what the weird sisters did, what Lady Macbeth did. How do you want to compare them, their impact over Macbeth? And then you make your own opinion and substantiate your opinion with proper arguments. I don't think this one is going to come, but still this is a question. The ending of Macbeth, the play Macbeth, is a pretty significant one, because Shakespeare doesn't end the play with the death of Macbeth, but Shakespeare makes another scene where a new king talks with his, noblemen and talks about future. That is a significant technique that Shakespeare used in this play, and that is very significant about this play. So, although there are too many significant questions, that's why this may not come, but this is, as a question, this is important to know. Anyway, again, another very, very important question is that Shakespeare's use of soliloquies play a significant role in the construction of the play Macbeth. Elaborate. The last question, that is symbolism or recurring or repeated images in Macbeth. These are all the questions that I wanted to share with you. You can practice these questions before the exam. And if you have failed to understand anything that I said, please feel free to ask, and you know what to do. Like, share and subscribe. Thank you.